Welcome to the Stochastic MLB Strategy Show. I'm your host, Neil Orfield. You can find me on Twitter at PlayerQDFS. I'm here with Adam Scherer. You can find him on Twitter at ShipMyMoneyDFS. And this show is sponsored by SoRare MLB, which is a collection of digital trading cards and an NFT-based free-to-play fantasy baseball game. We'll talk about that a little bit more later. I'll need you guys to help me set my lineup for this week. We got the game starting today for this SoRare MLB slate. Adam, while we're coming in, first of all, did you watch the Timberwolves game last night?
Part of it. I think I fell asleep in the third or fourth quarter.
Okay. So you didn't
actually, no, I didn't even fall asleep. I just stopped watching in the third or fourth quarter.
All right. That's fair, I guess. You weren't mesmerized by Ant. I thought, how could you stop watching Anthony Edwards? Okay, let me ask you a question. If you were the GM of an expansion team in the NBA and for some reason you got to pick any player currently, any basketball player in the world right now to start your team, how many players would you pick ahead of Anthony Edwards?
Are we counting Wembanyama?
We are counting Wembanyama.
I mean, at least 5.
The correct answer is 0, but at least 5 is not that bad. I think that's a reasonable take.
And to be clear, I don't mean like he is definitely 6th. I just like clearly you're taking Wembanyama, you're taking Jokic, Giannis, Luka, probably Embiid.
Embiid, come on now. Where are you factoring age here? Like, come on, these guys are
sort of. I mean, that's why I didn't say LeBron.
Franchise.
That's why I didn't say LeBron.
All right, that's fair.
I'm not positive how good Edwards is. Like, he's clearly very, very, very exciting and has the potential to be incredibly good and has improved, which is great to see. I still like you're taking Tatum ahead of him still. I'm taking SGA ahead of him.
Maybe you are.
Yeah, I'm taking SGA ahead of him.
How about Ja?
Taking Ja ahead of him, taking Halliburton ahead of him.
Halliburton, man, we are evaluating a completely different player. I'm definitely taking Ant over Halliburton. I'm probably taking him over Ja. I'll give you the rest. I'd probably take Jokic, Giannis, Wembanyama, but like Embiid, I'm taking Ant over Embiid. I'm taking Ant over Ja. I'm definitely taking him over Halliburton. That's just offensive.
I'm taking Booker ahead of him.
Oh God. I knew this conversation wasn't going to go that great. Like I wasn't going to agree with you, but I was like, when you suggested that he might be 6, I was like, okay, that's closer than I thought. And now you're adding in all these players, and I'm like, come on now. All right, Josh Gillum agrees with me. Halliburton over Ant-Man, that stuff. He disagrees about Ant over Embiid. That's fair. Yes, I know that I'm a homer, Ken. This deal is because you're a homer. I know that I'm a homer.
And also with some of those later guys, like the age does start to matter.
Right.
Like I mean, Booker right now I certainly think is better, but he is older. But like, yeah, I mean, SGA, Halliburton, Morant, they're all really young also.
Yeah, they are. I just think Ant's better than all of them. But, I think it's fair to disagree. I'll give you that. I am definitely a homer. But Ant is also younger than all of them. Yeah, and to be clear, I'm not saying that Ant is better than Embiid right now. I'm just saying when you factor in age,
right,
I might go with the younger
guy. And position. I mean, like I'm firmly believe that when it comes to winning in the playoffs, like you're driven by your guards, not by Joel Embiid.
Yeah, absolutely. Ryan Stubb says De'Aaron Fox over Ant, not a chance.
Probably.
You say you would take De'Aaron Fox over Ant?
I think it's close. I think it's really, really close.
That's fair. Brandon Smith says Curry. That's interesting, but also the age factors in.
Yeah, I didn't mention Curry just because of age.
Yeah. All right. Well, you can keep throwing names out here, and we'll debate them, I guess. Did you have any more that you wanted to throw out there, or should we start talking MLB?
No, I think that's it. Like everybody else that I'm thinking of is like old enough where, like LeBron, Durant, Curry, Lillard, like, yeah, I'm taking all of those guys if like we're just trying to win this year, but they're old enough that I'm taking it over them long term.
Yeah, fair enough. All right, we will get into baseball, Jeff. Yes, don't worry. This is a baseball strategy show, but the Timberwolves won a playoff game last night. I don't get to see that very often. You got to let me talk about the Timberwolves briefly when they do win a playoff game. Of course, next year they're going to start dominating. All right,
Johnny Davis probably.
Johnny Davis, God. All right, we have a 7-game slate here to talk about. It doesn't start till tonight, so we don't have to rush through it like we do with Live Before Lock sometimes. But we will probably rush through it anyway. Since it's only 7 games, won't take all that long. We'll start though with the White Sox at the Blue Jays. We have Lance Lynn on the mound for the Sox, Chris Bassett for the Jays. What's your level of interest in the pitchers?
Pretty interested in both guys. I just ran sort of a dummy crunch on DraftKings. Not that necessarily resembles what my lineups would look like, but just to kind of get a feel for, how often players are showing up. If I don't set any, rules or any stacks or anything like that, just to get, kind of a feel for the slate. And both of these guys showing up in the top 4 pitchers for me on DraftKings, Lynn coming in 4th, Bassett coming in 2nd, compared to the projected ownership. Pretty much, in line with these guys. We have Bassett projected for 18% ownership, Lynn at 14%. I'm in the same ballpark there. 10% ownership for Lynn, 26% ownership for Bassett, 18% chance of being top 2 for Bassett, 14 for Lynn. I'm in line with the top 2 pitcher percentages. So, a little under the field on Bassett, but still think he should be one of the more popular pitchers. I'm a little over the field on Lynn. I think he's just grading out a little bit better for me than he is for the field.
Yeah, obviously
a brutal match.
Right. Yeah, you don't really usually want to take pitchers going up against the Blue Jays, but yeah, Lance Lynn certainly has the upside to do well against the Blue Jays. What about the bats in this one?
Not a ton of interest. 2 pretty good pitchers here. Don't love either offense. Looking at the top stacks tool, you have, I don't know because I clicked the top pitchers tool twice. All right, there it is. So looking at the top stacks tool, you do have Toronto coming in 4th. This just kind of speaks to the upside that you're getting from Lance Lynn, but also the upside you get from Toronto. Lynn does typically do a good job limiting right-handed power and striking out righties. Since last year, only a 136 expected ISO to righties, 27.9% strikeout percentage. On the one hand, for Toronto, you do have a predominantly right-handed lineup, at least in terms of the hitters that you're scared of. Looking at their projected lineup, it's 5 righties and 4 lefties, but it's 5 righties in the top 6, and then Belt, Biggio, Kiermaier rounding out the lineup. Those aren't exactly the most scary hitters at the bottom of the order. Most of your power is coming from the right side. So that does set up well for Lynn, and it makes me a little bit less confident in Toronto. But at the same time, when you talk about what Lance Lynn has done against right-handed hitters, that's against all right-handed hitters. Obviously, those numbers would not be as good if he just constantly faced Springer, Bichette, Guerrero over and over and over again. So it is still a dangerous spot for him. You do still get plenty of upside from Toronto. You have nearly a 4 points, or a little over a 4.7 implied run total. The upside's clearly there. I just kind of like both sides of that one. As far as the White Sox go, not a ton of interest there. Bassett's a pretty solid pitcher. We do have them going a little bit under-owned on DraftKings with a 4% chance of being the top stack, 6% projected ownership, but not really in love with getting to the White Sox. 144 expected ISO to lefties since last year for Bassett, 145 to righties. So typically does a good job of limiting power. From an individual standpoint, no hitters on the White Sox are really showing up for me all that much. So yeah, I think it's one of those weird games where I like Lynn and the Blue Jays.
Adam, I feel like over the past couple of years, I've watched you on several MLB strategy shows or deeper dive, whatever, and I've heard you say several times that Brandon Belt is a great hitter. He just needs to get out of San Francisco. Has he fallen off a little bit?
I think so. I've been really disappointed in his start this year. I absolutely loved him going to the Blue Jays from just being a fan of Brandon Belt standpoint. He has started off this year really poorly. Now, maybe he turns that around. Maybe he doesn't. Obviously the guy's dealt with a lot of injuries throughout his career. He is getting older. He's, 35 years old now. So, it could just, be him falling off. Last year, 96 WRC plus is, well below his career average. And then this year he's been absolutely god awful. So striking out 46% of the time through his first 13 games, 50 at-bats this year, or 50 plate appearances rather. So I don't know. Maybe it's just a slump and he turns it around, but the dude is also getting kind of old and has dealt with plenty of injuries over the last few years.
So that's fair. AJP says, can you guys bring back the game tracker on your podcast so we can rewind or fast forward? So unfortunately, right now, with me self-producing and through StreamYard, I have not been trained, and I don't even know if it's possible on StreamYard, but once NBA winds down, I think we're going to be devoting more resources to MLB. So we'll have regular shows before lock. And I think those shows we will have a producer. It'll be produced elsewhere. So I believe that we will have that back pretty soon. Once NBA is winding down a little bit more, we can devote more resources to MLB. So unfortunately, right now we can't, but I do believe it'll be coming back, within a matter of weeks at this point. All right, Adam, can you rank the 4 sides of this game?
Let's go Bassett 1, Blue Jays bats 2, Lynn 3, White Sox 4. But I think the first 3 are all pretty close, and then the White Sox are 4th for sure.
Okay.
And also, as far as the game tracker goes, I miss it too because it helps me out a lot when I'm not listening, and then I get asked a question. I have no idea where we are.
Yeah, that's fair. I mean, It is nice to have there for sure. I just maybe I can see if it's possible for me to get trained in on it.
I certainly have no idea how to do it.
Yeah, I'm not sure it's possible in StreamYard, unfortunately. All right. Miami at Atlanta. We've got Edward Cabrera on the mound for the Marlins. Spencer Strider for the Braves. Guessing you're going to have some interest in the pitchers here. Tell me about it.
Yeah, quite a bit of interest in Strider in particular. Once again, you have Spencer Strider on a relatively short slate where you have some other solid pitchers, but nobody that is really remotely in his ballpark as far as getting strikeouts goes. So certainly going to want to get to a lot of Strider. He should be the highest owned pitcher on the slate. He's projected for 62% ownership on DraftKings. I think that's high in terms of optimal percentage versus ownership. But, you and I have talked about this a lot where you're talking about one roster spot for a pitcher and a position that is a bit easier to project than hitters. And so I'm not overly concerned by the fact Strider's going over-owned. It's going to be relatively easy to offset with, a contrarian SP2 or contrarian stacks. But, certainly be aware of his ownership. It probably is coming in quite a bit high relative to his chances of being a top 2 pitcher, but he clearly should be the highest owned guy on the slate. As far as Cabrera goes, I think he's more of a difficult sell. He does have very good stuff. Also has a difficult matchup here against Atlanta. 10% chance of being a top 2 pitcher, only 2% projected ownership. So certainly somebody that you could use, to pair with Strider, for example, if you're trying to offset some ownership. But with Cabrera, I think it's much more like this is really risky. Let's just hope that he pitches up to his talent. Whereas Strider, you kind of know what you're getting, and it's very clearly the top projected pitcher on the slate. As an aside, one of the bets I tweeted out earlier was under 5.5 strikeouts for Cabrera.
Okay. If we take a look tomorrow, which we probably won't do this, look at a composite of all 150 maxers on the slate. If we take a look at the slate tomorrow, do you think they would be over or underweight to 60% Strider?
Probably over.
Yeah, that would be my guess as well.
I think it's more likely. So I said I thought they'd be over on Tatis the other day, but you could really make the argument in either direction. I think it's much more likely they're over on Strider than I thought it was that they were going to be over on Tatis.
Yeah, I feel like pitchers in general, especially if it's good chalk, like I feel like pros are a little bit more likely to be overweight to the field. And Spencer Strider, I would say, is good chalk in this spot. So yeah, I think that I'm with you. It's likely that they'd be over.
Yeah, like looking at the top pitcher, so yes, he's going over-owned. He's also nearly twice as likely to be a top 2 pitcher compared to any other pitcher on the slate. Sonny Gray, Jordan Montgomery, both coming in at 23 and 20% respectively. Strider at 42. So basically double them, and then everybody else is behind them. So it just becomes, in terms of just chances of success for your lineup, it becomes really difficult to make up that gap if you get away from Strider.
Right. And then how about the bats in this game?
Not a ton of interest here. I'm certainly not interested in the Marlins side. The only case I think you really could make for the Marlins would be, if you are just saying, hey, this pitcher is 62% owned, he's going to have a bad start here and there. Maybe the Marlins get to him, but 2.7 implied run total, not for me. On the other side, certainly can get to Atlanta here. It is a talented pitcher in Cabrera, but it is also a talented Atlanta offense, and you do only have 14 total offenses today. So far in his career dating back to the 2021 season, 142 expected ISO to lefties for Cabrera, 200 to righties. Not entirely surprising either that he's actually had reverse splits in terms of power. He has a very, very, very good changeup that he actually throws about 30% of the time to both sides of the plate. That's a pitch that typically is going to work better against opposite-handed hitters. Now, he's had a lot of success with it against righties as well. Sub 100 expected ISO on that pitch, 20% swinging strike percentage. So very, very good pitch. But a lot of times you will see reverse splits for pitchers who rely on a changeup predominantly. So those numbers, may or may not even out, but he has given up more power so far to right-handed hitters. Clearly looking to Acuna, Riley, Murphy makes sense. Don't ignore Matt Olson just because he's left-handed or anything, but still a tough spot for the Braves, but you do get a very high ceiling for them. In the top stacks tool, they are coming in middle of the pack, 7% top stack percentage, 6% projected ownership, 1% top value percentage. So that drives down their stack score a bit, but very high upside spot if you can afford them, but also, not the safest spot against Cabrera.
Do you think those right-handed bats might go like under-owned because people don't want to play righty bats against a righty pitcher? Or do you think enough people are using like projections and optimizers at this point that it's not actually a real factor?
I think enough people are using projections and optimizers that isn't the reason they're going to go under-owned. I think the reason they're going to go under-owned is just, what you and I talk about a lot when you have a good offense against a at least talented pitcher, pretty good pitcher in Cabrera, is that when you use median projections, it kind of just cancels everything out and ignores that a high percentage of the time you're either going to get a good game from the pitcher or from the offense. It's not just going to constantly be 6 innings, 3 earned runs. So I think that's why you're going to see them go a little bit on their own. Looking at the bats individually, Ronald Acuna is pulling 10% on DraftKings. Ozzie Albies is the next highest at 4%. Olson's at 4%. Riley's at 2%. We have Max Fried projected to pitch. But yeah, as far as the bats go, they're going low owned, but I think the reason is more so just people's reliance on median projections.
You said we have Max.
So I just updated ownership. I guess I had yesterday.
Okay.
Acuna's at 16%, Riley's at 7%, Murphy's at 5%, Albies at 5%. So slightly different numbers, but same point as before.
Okay. Sounds good. And then rank the 4 sides of the game.
Strider with a bullet, Braves, Cabrera, Marlins.
Okay. Yeah, Jeff says, and they are expensive. Yeah, that definitely makes it a little bit tougher. Mm-hmm. And as Josh said, hard to stack Braves if you were paying up for Strider. Yeah, that's going to be very difficult to do. So yeah, it makes sense that they wouldn't be extremely high owned. All right, we'll move on to the next game. But first, I need you guys to help me set my SoRare MLB lineup. SoRare is, of course, the sponsor of this show. Let me share my screen here, and we can go through. So last week, this past period, I actually did win money despite Aaron Judge putting up a negative score for me. The rest of my guys did just enough.
What do you lose Romano. Points for outs or strikeouts? Or?
Yes, let's see. How did he lose points? -1 for show all stats. Strikeouts. Yep, you lose points per strikeouts. Caught stealing, you lose points.
Okay.
Looks like those are the only 2.
Throwback scoring.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, they have, and then it's only 2 points per strikeout, so it is a little bit different than like daily fantasy type stats. Like this is definitely a different type of game than that. And then I was looking at the first place. I want to see like how, because I'm very new to this, so I'm trying to learn still how to play this game. Did see DeGrom in the starting pitcher spot. Vince Velasquez, so a starting pitcher that you can play in the relief pitch. So I think I'm on the right track with Spencer Strider. He didn't start during that period, so I was not able to start him. Shohei Ohtani apparently just a batter here. And then, of course, the real reason they won, Adolis Garcia putting up 93 fantasy points is absolutely insane. Hard to replicate that. But yeah, looks like he was in probably all of the top lineups here. All right, so now I'm going to set my actually first I'm going to open my reward. So I did in this past game week when we set the lineup on Friday or whenever it was, did win a reward. It was not, I didn't particularly place very high. So this is I think it's a limited tier 5 or 4 card. So I'm not going to get like a Trout here, but these can be useful. Any card can end up being useful in the right setting. Yeah, Martin Maldonado.
That one cannot.
This one in particular cannot. So I take back what I was just saying. But usually most of these cards you can find different places where they are going to be useful. Maybe that's more true in NBA than MLB. Like NBA, it's like, well, this player, you can't use him right now, but at some point the price is going to be too low, or his last and average is going to be too low. And then he's going to be in a good spot. And it might not apply quite as much in MLB. You really need those top level cards. All right. Now I'm going to set my lineup. And you can help me out here. All right, limited pro. This is my contest. So we've got both. Wait, I thought they had projected pitchers on here before. Oh, yeah, we do. Okay, we've got both Shane McClanahan and Spencer Strider are the projected pitchers for their teams. Have a projected start in this period. So I can play Spencer Strider at relief pitcher. I'm going to start with McClanahan as my starting pitcher. Spencer Strider as my relief pitcher. Those two I think are pretty easy. Adam, we've got 4 games, so it is cumulative. So if a player has 4 games, I think that kind of weighs in their favor over a player who has 3 games. So would you take Anthony Rizzo with 4 games over Freddie Freeman with 3?
Yeah,
I think that one seems pretty straightforward when you can get one with 4 games. Don't have any great opt out. Brendan Lau, would you? The debate now would be: do I want to stack or just play players with more games?
I feel like more games should be the priority, I think.
Yeah, that seems like it would be, with the exception of like split hitters who are like maybe won't get to play in all those games anyway.
Well, the only hesitation I had is like if you're going to lose points for strikeouts, then conceivably like more games could be bad. But you still probably should be targeting more games over stacking, I would think.
Yeah, I think that makes sense too. I'm gonna go with Brandon Lowe here. I don't know if it's Lowe or Lau. I think it's Brandon Lowe, Nate Lau.
It's Brandon Lau, Nathaniel Lowe, Josh Lowe.
All right. Brandon Lau. Aaron Judge, 4 games. Obviously, negative points for strikeouts hurts, but I think if he just like hits a home run or two, that's going to more than make up for it, obviously. So I think I want to take Aaron Judge with 4 games. What do you think, Aaron Judge?
Judge for sure.
Okay. No more 4-game players near the top. Freddie Freeman, Mookie Betts, or James Outman?
Mookie and then Freeman if you can.
Okay, I think I can play them both. Mookie and then flex spot to close it out. I will. Oh yeah, I can play Freddie Freeman here, so I'm going to do that. Perfect. And I got a little stack here with the Dodgers, little stack with the Yankees, one off with Brandon Lau, and then I can't imagine that there's a better relief pitcher than Spencer Strider. Shane McClanahan seems like a pretty strong starting pitcher, so I like this lineup.
Getting you Spencer Strider as a reliever is a cheat code.
Yeah, absolute cheat code. It is only 2 points per strikeout, so not like the same level as it would be if it were 3 points per strikeout. But I think I like that lineup quite a bit. Guys, let me post a link real quick here, and then we'll move back to talk some DFS. Give me 1 second. I'm gonna post a link so you can sign up for SoRare. Post it in YouTube chat. All right, just posted our link to SoRare in the YouTube chat. I think that's let me make sure that link actually works. Yep, looks like it goes to the right place. Okay, cool. Adam, we will move back to talking some DFS. All right, and the next game on the slate is Yankees at my Twins. We've got Sonny Gray on the mound for the Twins, Johnny Brito for the Yankees. Starting with the pitchers, any interest here?
Yeah, for sure. Sonny Gray, tough matchup here going up against the Yankees, 9,300, but just sort of a product of this slate where you have one legitimate ace in Spencer Strider and then just some solid pitchers. Gray, certainly a solid pitcher. 24% projected ownership on DraftKings. We have him with about a 23% chance of being a top 2 pitcher. No real issues with that. I'm a little bit lower, but still think he's a top 3 guy on this slate. So even though you have a relatively tough matchup with the Yankees, they only have a 3.4 implied run total. It looks like it's like in the 40s in Minnesota today. Everything sets up pretty well for Gray. There are some strikeouts in this lineup too, although it's a little bit watered down Yankees lineup in terms of power, and that also takes away some of the strikeouts. You have more contact hitters in there than normal, but still just, a watered down lineup. Not the best Yankees lineup. And Gray is a good pitcher, both at limiting power and getting strikeouts. So certainly happy to get to him on this slate. 25% strikeout percentage against righties, 24% to lefties since the start of last season. 132 expected ISO to lefties, 127 to righties, 297 expected WOBA to righties, 294 to lefties. So pretty much across the board, no real splits. Good at limiting power, good at keeping guys off base, good at getting strikeouts. Just a good pitcher against a watered-down Yankees lineup on a slate that doesn't have a ton of good pitching. On the other side, I'm not looking to get the Brito. We talked about him the other day. I couldn't really find anything from his minor league numbers that made me think he was going to be particularly good. Projection systems don't really like him this year. And then he just went out there and got lit up after starting out the season really, really well. Not really looking to get to him here against the Twins. I do think that there's reason to have interest in some Twins bats. I'm a little surprised they're 4th from the bottom in top stack percentage. I think it's probably a lot to do with the weather here. They only have a 4.1 implied run total as well. Going a little bit under owned, 4.5% chance of being the top stack, about 3% aggregate ownership. Brito has, a very limited sample in the majors so far, but he has had issues with power, doesn't strike out a lot of guys. Not surprisingly, I'm willing to go to Joey Gallo along with, Buxton, Correa, Kepler, Polanco. It's just a pretty solid Twins lineup, even though the weather isn't ideal. Yeah,
it's pretty cold here. Yeah, we'll have to do our home run picks later again. It's a mystery. Who is Adam going to take as his home run pick today? All right. So you say you do have interest in the Twins bats. You kind of went over it already. Are you playing any Yankees?
I mean, you can always obviously play Judge, Volpe leading off. Rizzo's fine, but I'm not as interested in the Yankees. Gray is certainly a good major league pitcher. Lower implied run total here. I'm more interested in the Twins side against the pitcher in Brito, who I'm still not convinced is a major league pitcher. 412 expected WOBA to righties so far this year, 410 to lefties, 333 expected ISO to lefties, 235 to righties, kind of just giving it up across the board, striking out 21% of lefties, only 13% of righties. I think that there's a lot more blow up potential for Brito here than there is for Sonny Gray.
Okay. So you much rather prioritize playing Twins bats rather than Yankees bats?
Yeah.
All right, I guess give me your rank the 4 sides.
Sonny Gray 1, Twins 2, Yankees 3, Brito 4.
Eric Johnson, yes, we are saying burrito. That is the word we're saying. Sean V says, ship my Sonny. Yeah, you're a big Sonny Gray fan, so maybe that factors in here a little bit. Stephen Leavitt says 40s in Minnesota. It must be July. No, Minnesota summers are great, other than it does get pretty mosquito-y, but it's actually like people think that it's cold here all year. No, we have very cold winters and then like relatively hot summers here. It's actually that's why we live here. It's great, like 5 or 6 months of the year, and then just awful the other.
My friend dragged me to Montana a couple summers ago. That's where I got the
live, laugh, love hat.
Yeah. But yeah, it was like I had no interest in actually going up there, but we got up there and we went in like June. It was like, oh, this is amazing.
Yeah, no, it's nice. And in places that have bad weather, it's still pretty nice in the summer. And maybe nicer because in places that have nice weather in the winter, oftentimes they're just way too hot. Like Arizona in the summer is just like god awful. So yeah, highly recommend. Visit Minnesota in the summer. It's nice here. Did you already rank the 4 sides?
Yeah.
Okay.
Gray Twins, Yankees, burrito.
Okay. Detroit at Milwaukee. We have Matt Boyd on the mound for Detroit. Colin Rea for Milwaukee. Starting with the pitchers, what's your level of interest?
Not super high. Colin Rea is not someone that I am really sold on as a major league pitcher. He's bounced back and forth between here and Japan. Does have a good matchup against the Tigers. So, on this particular slate, you can certainly get to him a bit. He's pulling 12% ownership at 7K. If you need a value pitcher, I think that is perfectly fine, but unlikely that I really need to build around him or anything. On the other side, Matt Boyd, a pitcher that I used to really, really like, and he has certainly fallen off. Not really interested in getting to him here against Milwaukee. 4.6 implied run total for the Brewers, 3.9 for the Tigers.
Okay. I see Fanatic asking if we're going to talk about FanDuel at all or just DraftKings. Yeah, I mean, most of our audience is more interested in DraftKings, but I'm thinking about the best way. I mean, if you have thoughts for like game to game, you can
the only thing that changes is pitching. Like the offenses have the same matchups. Pitching is just different because you roster one, but in general, like it's a lot less interesting to talk about because you're just playing Spencer Strider or like Sonny Gray probably.
And I think you've said that you're more inclined to full stack on FanDuel than DraftKings because of the scoring not being as home run dependent.
Yeah. So FanDuel right now, the only 2 pitchers getting double-digit ownership are Spencer Strider and Chris Bassett. Bassett coming in at 8,500, Strider 11.2. So other than that, every pitcher is a contrarian option. Sonny Gray, Jordan Montgomery, Gray getting 6% ownership, 10% chance of being optimal. But yeah, it's like you're in baseball. Typically, you can stack like from a salary standpoint, you can kind of stack who you want. Like you're going to find ways to make it work. It's not like basketball where you're going to have like a screaming value stand out. Outside of like when DraftKings completely misprices Tatis, like that was a spot where you needed to differentiate sites. But in general, like it's going to be the same thing for both sites outside of talking about pitching. And pitching is just way more interesting to talk about on DraftKings.
Yeah. So, yeah, I mean, if you have specific questions about FanDuel, feel free to throw them in. It's just, so much of the analysis is applicable both spots, and most of the audience is playing DraftKings. So we focus on DraftKings when we're talking about like pricing and stuff, but like as far as the like players go and stacks go, it's generally the same kind of analysis. How about the bats in this Detroit Milwaukee game?
Certainly interested in the Brewers side against Boyd, who has just kind of lost it over the last couple of years. Still a one night limited sample since last year, but going back to the 2021 season, still relatively limited, but a little bit bigger sample. 165 expected ISO to righties, just a 19.5% strikeout percentage there. Has done very good. Has done a very good job limiting power to lefties, but looking at Willy Adames, William Contreras in particular, they're going to look pretty good. Brian Anderson is a pretty cheap one-off, makes sense, or as part of a stack. So the Brewers lineup isn't the most exciting. You also could have Mike Brosseau leading off at a cheap price tag. Brewers offense isn't the most exciting, but certainly don't mind targeting against Boyd here. On the Tigers side against Rea, you don't have a ton of good bats, but you do have some power hitting, highly regarded prospects. Riley Green in particular, I like. Kerry Carpenter looks really good. Spencer Torkelson was drafted first overall at one point. Don't exactly know why, but
didn't know that.
He supposedly can hit. So like if you want to take shots on those guys, fine. Colin Rea, again, has bounced back and forth between here and Japan in his very limited sample so far this year. He's struck out 12.5% of righties, 304 expected ISO, but 85 total pitches to righties. Not a lot you can read into that. To get any sort of real major league sample, you have to go all the way back to like 2016. So, not the best there. Pitchers tend to change over the course of 7 years, but 190 expected ISO to righties, 150 to lefties, 17 to 18% strikeout percentage in, that 7-year stretch. So just kind of an unknown, but somebody that isn't likely to be very good, facing an offense that isn't very good, but does at least have some power.
So then let's move on to the bats a little bit. Or were you just talking about the bats? I lost track of where we are exactly. But does that make you interested in like when you have a bad offense versus a bad pitcher? Like, do you then become interested in the offense under the assumption that they're going to be relatively low owned, which we have? I guess that's not really applicable here because we have Detroit coming in at 8% ownership. In general, though, is that kind of a like? I feel like that's usually often a place where you can find some interest in stacks is when it's a bad stack against a bad pitcher. Here, apparently, they are getting some ownership, but
yeah, it kind of depends because in this case, you have a very cheap Detroit team, and so they're going to get some ownership because they project as good values. So that's sort of the thing. Like if Detroit were for some reason, 4,500 across the board, they probably wouldn't be getting much ownership here, and it would be like, okay, this is kind of interesting against, a pitcher who I doubt is very good, but the salaries are just going to sort of drive people there. So ownership is pretty much in line with top stack percentage. So again, I don't mind getting to some of these guys. Riley Green in particular, only projected for 7% ownership. Nick Maton's projected for 12, Baez and Carpenter double digits as well. Akil Baddoo 9%. So kind of surprising to me. And again, it's because Riley Green's 3,800 while all those other guys are cheaper. But I like Riley Green as like the lowest owned guy from that group. But if you're going to the Tigers, I do think it's, Maton, Green, Baez, Carpenter, Torkelson, Baddoo, some combination of those guys where they at least have power, even though they're flawed hitters.
Okay. And then how would you rank the four sides of it?
Brewers bats, Boyd, Rhea, Tigers, I guess, but not super confident in any of it.
Interesting. So you're taking the stack and then the pitcher that's opposing the stack as your top two.
You could say Rhea over Boyd. Like I think they're so similar.
Yeah, for sure. All right, we have
the actual reason I said Boyd is just he's projected for 6% ownership and Rhea is 12, and I think they're the same.
Yeah, fair. All right, we have 3 games left, starting with the A's at the Angels. We have Ken Waldichuk on the mound for the A's, Jose Suarez for the Angels. Adam, what is your level of interest?
A little bit of interest in Suarez, less in Waldichuk. You do get a solid matchup for Suarez going against the A's. He's a solid pitcher in general, and he is only $5,800. This is a sizable park upgrade for Oakland going into LA. If this game were in Oakland, you would have a much lower implied run total on the A's. But the salary for Suarez, certainly makes up for it. Since the start of last year, 21.9% strikeout percentage against righties, 167 expected ISO, 319 expected WOBA. Pretty much just, an average dude facing a below average A's offense on a slate with not a lot of great pitching. Suarez pulling 20% ownership. I think that's a little high in terms of optimal percentage versus ownership, but perfectly fine. Not somebody I would roster on FanDuel outside of just, random tournament lineups. But on DraftKings as an SP2, I think Suarez looks fine. Waldichuk is more difficult to get to. Relatively highly regarded pitching prospect, part of the Frankie Montas trade, hasn't translated to much success in the majors so far, and certainly have a dangerous matchup here. 225 expected ISO to lefties, 204 to righties since the start of last year. Much more interested in getting to the Angels bats than I am in Waldichuk.
Okay. And tell me about your level of interest in all the bats in this game.
Yeah, I think the Angels are one of the top stacks on the slate. Right now, we have them first in top stack percentage at 15%. 24% aggregate ownership is certainly a lot, and it's different. You and I have talked about it a lot. We kind of talked about it with Strider. It is a bigger concern with offenses because, for one, there's just more variance there in not only do you score runs, but how do you score runs? Is it by home run or are you just getting walks and singles and not really contributing from a fantasy standpoint? So that combined with the fact that if you're stacking the Angels, you'd say you're taking 4 or 5 guys from the Angels, every hitter on this team, with the exception of Zach Neto and Chad Wallach, are projected for double-digit ownership. So you're talking about probably having 4 or 5 guys that are 10 to 20% owned. In the case of Mike Trout on DraftKings, 28%. So it becomes more difficult to do that. And then, to take it a step further, if you are playing 5 of those Angels and then you play Spencer Strider, you're down to 4 roster spots on DraftKings, or on FanDuel, you're down to 4 roster spots if you're going a 4-man and Strider to be contrarian. So it starts to become difficult. It kind of pushes you into a situation where in a lot of lineups, you're going to end up having to say well, do I prefer Strider and playing contrarian at offense, or do I prefer the Angels and having to roster non-Spencer Strider pitchers. Typically, I'm going to end up going the Strider route. But that's not to say that, you can't get to the Angels if you find ways to be contrarian, or that, you can't use the Angels as one-offs, two-mans, three-mans. You and I have talked about that before, that I definitely disagree, and I think you do too, with the notion that you can't play popular, one-offs from popular stacks. You very easily can, especially on DraftKings, where home runs are weighted more. If Mike Trout hits 2 home runs and the Angels suck, as a team, that's exactly what you wanted to do, and it's not like that's some outlandish outcome. On FanDuel, it's a little bit less appealing just because of runs and RBI being weighted more than home runs, but still, no issues with doing that. So that's typically the way I would end up approaching this. We've talked about it on Coors Field games. A lot of times, a team like this, like the Angels, will be my highest owned team in terms of total exposure, but I'll still end up below the field on most of the team. It's just that, in terms of raw exposure, I'm still getting more than other teams because they do look like one of the best spots.
Yep, absolutely. And and I think getting those one-off bats from popular stacks, they might be low owned as a one-off because so many people don't want to play the bats from popular stacks outside of the stack. You actually might get Mike Trout as a one-off, or if you're playing, a two-man secondary stack, that might actually be low owned as a shorter stack or a one-off.
Right. Yeah. The combinations matter too. And it's really difficult to quantify in DFS. It's very easy to just take ownership projections and say, oh, well, this is the total ownership of my lineup, or this is the product ownership of my lineup, whatever you might be looking for. But it's a lot more difficult to quantify, well, Mike Trout's going to be 28% owned, but of the, 10,000 lineups that have Mike Trout, 8,000 of them are going to have 3 other Angels. 1,000 are going to have 4 other Angels. That part's more difficult, but you will see a lot of, let's say Mike Trout has a good game. Yes, a quarter of the field is benefiting, but of the quarter of the field that has him, a very high percentage is dead if several other Angels don't also have good games.
Right. Yeah, exactly. All right. And how would you rank the 4 sides of this one?
Angels bats 1, Suarez 2, A's bats 3, Waldichuk 4. Didn't specifically mention anything from the A's bats, but it is a park upgrade. Brent Rooker certainly has power. He looks decent. Ruiz has plenty of speed. He's been hitting at the top of the order, so don't mind getting there. But Brent Rooker individually, I like. Shea Langoliers as a catcher has some power. Don't mind getting there. So it's not a total ignore of Oakland like we get a lot of times, especially when they're in Oakland. This is a good park for hitting. It's an average pitcher on the other side, but I certainly prefer the Angels side of the equation.
Okay. And sorry, did you give the your rankings of the 4 sides?
Yeah.
Okay. Guys, you can probably see on the screen, I'm currently sharing the top stacks tool with you. We do have a deal going on right now for first-time users only. You can get 50% off any sport, platinum, weekly, or monthly package at Stokastic. So obviously the top stacks, which I'm displaying here, will come with the MLB package. You use promo code SCORE. You get 50% off whatever package you want to commit to. If it's a month, if it's a week, if it's all sports, if it's just MLB, whichever package, you can get 50% off using promo code SCORE. So make sure you check that out. I'll show you. So right now I'm showing you the top stacks tool on the screen. This is what Adam and I are referencing throughout the show. Really easy to use if you're hand building, obviously if you're using an optimizer as well, but you get top stack odds, top value stack odds, ownership for each stack. You can stack score for an easy look at which stacks look the best on a given day. Really great tool. These are the primary tools that I use for MLB DFS. Top pitchers tool, same kind of deal. You get your top 2 pitcher odds, ownership for each pitcher, leverage, top 2 value pitcher, et cetera, et cetera. And then, of course, and then this year we have the top batters tool as well, which honestly I have not gotten really into just because I am using an optimizer. But if you're hand building, certainly useful to look at the top batters tool as well to figure out which bats in particular you want to play from a given slate. But yeah, these tools, you can get access to all of them for 50% off using promo code SCORE. And yeah, the Stokastic team doing quite well lately with all of the C-suite just crushing everything using the tools, both MLB. I guess some of that has been NBA as well, but these guys, you use the tools and crush at every sport. So highly recommend checking out these Stokastic tools. Use promo code SCORE when you do so. All right, Adam, moving on to the next game, we've got Kansas City at Arizona. Brad Keller on the mound for Kansas City, Tommy Henry for Arizona. Starting with the pitchers, any interest here?
A little bit in Henry. Not much in Keller. I think that Keller is a decent real life pitcher, just not a lot of strikeout stuff there. 1% owned, 6% chance of being a top 2 pitcher. Henry, 6% owned, 5K is the real reason that you would have any interest there. If you do need to pay down for pitching, he's got enough strikeout stuff in him that there's upside. It's certainly not a spot where I'm comfortable. I do think that the Royals can pose a problem for him. I don't think he's, a great pitcher by any stretch. 9 starts last year, 47 total innings for Arizona, struck out 17.5% of hitters, projects for about a 19% strikeout percentage this year. So, again, not great strikeout stuff, but at 5K, he's not Zach Greinke basically. So if you have to pay down there, fine, but don't really want to, and I don't really want to go to Keller either.
Okay. And then what about the bats then?
Arizona is really high in the top stacks tool, which kind of surprises me just because Keller is a decent pitcher. But Arizona does have quality bats in their lineup as well. Only a 139 expected ISO to righties since last year for Keller, 155 to lefties. But when you go through the order, Rojas, Marte, Carroll, Walker, Gurriel, these guys are all pretty appealing. Gabby Moreno is a solid hitting prospect for a catcher as well. Alec Thomas has some upside at the bottom of the order. So it is a pretty deep Arizona lineup. They do have a 5.6 implied run total. All that certainly looks good and is why they are second to the Angels in top stack percentage. On the other side for KC, 4.9 implied run total. So they're pretty big dogs here, but they still have one of the higher implied run totals on the slate going up against Henry. Since coming up last year, 189 expected ISO to righties, 147 to lefties. Certainly like Bobby Witt quite a bit. He is somebody that has typically been cheaper on FanDuel than DraftKings this year. He's one of the guys that's really stood out when you are playing both sites as somebody that you just typically get a lot more of on FanDuel. Same thing today. Third base, shortstop eligible there at 3,300 compared to being 5,100 on DraftKings. So good play on either site, but certainly offering more value for you on FanDuel. Perez is going to look good if you can find the salary for him at 4,800. Olivares is fine. Franmil Reyes, assuming he's in the lineup, is going to look pretty good. So I like the KC side. Certainly like the Arizona side more, but that is probably the consensus opinion. KC is third in top stack percentage. They are also first in top value percentage on DraftKings. So both of these offenses should be pretty popular, and I agree with that.
Okay. With that in mind, how would you rank the 4 sides?
D-backs, Royals, Henry, Keller.
Okay. And we have one final game on the slate, that game being St. Louis at San Francisco. We've got Jordan Montgomery on the mound for the Cardinals, Alex Cobb for the Giants. Starting with the pitchers, Adam, what's your level of interest?
I don't totally understand why these pitchers are not getting a little bit more ownership. Cobb pulling 10% on DraftKings, Montgomery pulling 15%. They are relatively expensive, and I guess that's probably the answer. Neither one is an elite strikeout pitcher, but they are both good pitchers overall. Not the best matchups either. So I guess I'm kind of answering my question, like why they aren't getting more ownership. It's just that like you have ownership coming into so many pitchers that are just kind of mediocre on this slate that I thought these two would get a little bit more despite the matchups. But since last year, 101 expected ISO to righties for Cobb, 108 to lefties, 26% strikeout percentage to righties, 22.5 to lefties. For Montgomery, just shy of a 20% strikeout percentage to righties, 32% to lefties. And the Giants do have some quality right-handed bats, but being left-handed against this team is also beneficial because it does mitigate Conforto and Yastrzemski, two of their better hitters. You kind of just have to take your chances with the guys like Estrada, Flores, JD Davis, Darren Ruff, but not a good park for home runs either. It's been an average park over the last few years for run scoring in general, but does kill home runs. So they're both just solid pitchers, two of the more talented pitchers on the slate, but they are also priced up a bit. So really, I think it just ends up coming down to like, what are you doing with your offenses? Are you able to afford, Montgomery or Cobb alongside Strider, or do you have to pay down to somebody cheaper?
Okay. How about the bats in this game?
Not particularly interested. I just have a lot of respect for both pitchers, and this park, like I said, it's average for scoring runs, but awful for hitting home runs, and particularly on DraftKings, home runs are king. So I do think this is the weird spot where like you could probably make a case that either team is more appealing on FanDuel just because of the scoring system there compared to DraftKings. If you get a bunch of singles, doubles, runs scored from one of these teams, that's going to help you out more on FanDuel than it will on DraftKings, but nothing that really stands out from either side.
Okay. And then how do you rank the 4 sides?
We'll go Cobb, Montgomery. I will say in that dummy crunch, I got the exact same amount of Cobb and Montgomery, but
okay.
We'll go Cobb, Montgomery, and then Cardinals, and then Giants, just because I like the Cardinals offense a little bit more.
Okay. All right. If you're playing 3 stacks, a three max contest, which 3 stacks you go into?
Keeping in mind that I probably will just be jamming in a 60% owned Spencer Strider. From a full stack standpoint, probably like Toronto, Milwaukee, Atlanta.
Interesting. Toronto, Milwaukee, Atlanta. Okay, so none of them being your first pick there is Toronto, which is 4th in the top stack stool just in terms of odds of success. Toronto, Milwaukee, Atlanta, there all in the top half, I guess.
Actually, probably Oakland over Atlanta, just because they're cheaper. Like, you're going to need that value, I think. So, the way it probably would end up working out for me is that, like, I end up with Strider. I try and get to a lower owned main stack and then mix in guys from like the Angels, Diamondbacks, Royals.
Okay. So it would be Atlanta if you could fit them in there with Strider, but just because you're probably not going to be able to, you'd rather go to Oakland.
Yeah. Okay. I mean, it's kind of the same thing with Toronto. Like, I don't know for sure if I can fit them. Maybe I would end up with like KC or something, but ideally, I think I would want to offset some of that ownership by getting to like a single digit own stack at least.
Top 3 pitchers on this slate.
Strider times a million, Sonny Gray, Chris Bassett.
Okay, and then home run pick.
Joey Gallo. No, I'll switch it up from Gallo here. Let's go with I immediately just like went right back to Joey Gallo.
You can go to Gallo. There's nothing wrong with it.
I'll take Brent Rooker.
Interesting. All right, let me see.
Actually, Hunter Renfroe.
Hunter Renfroe. I'm going to go. Could I go to Shohei Ohtani?
Yeah, sure.
Or is that okay? I'll go with Shohei Ohtani.
Yeah, I like it. He hits lefties well. Waldichuk doesn't actually get lefties out that well.
Nice. All right. Well, that does it, I think, for the main slate. We did get a question about the turbo slate. Any comments on the turbo slate? Here, I'll share my screen real quick. I just pulled up the turbo slate top stack stool. So a little bit less information on the turbo slate top stack stool, but it looks like Texas.
The 610 slate, I'm assuming.
Yeah, apparently. Yeah. So I haven't given any thought to the turbo slate, but I'll show you quickly what the tools say. Texas, top of the top stack list, coming in at relatively low ownership too. So Texas looks good. Cleveland looks like they're going to be super chalk, 23% projected ownership, 15.8% chance to be in the top stack. Boston, number 3 here in terms of top stack odds. And then the pitchers, maybe the more interesting part. So we've got Nick Lodolo on the mound for the Reds against Texas, Chris Sale against Baltimore. Being the top 2 pitchers out here. Actually, it looks like it's actually, can you still see my screen? Sometimes, okay, good. You can still see my screen. It's fairly leveled out here. We got several who have pretty good odds, I guess, because there's so few games on the slate. You're gonna have better odds of being a top 2 pitcher. But yeah, Nick Lodolo looking the best here. Chris Sale looks pretty good, but overowned. Both of them looking a little bit overowned, which again we don't care about as much with pitchers. Adam, did you have any other comments on the turbo slate?
Just that the Chris Sale versus Baltimore spot in particular stands out as one of those like huge boom or bust spots for both sides. It's not quite the same with it being, a 4-game slate. You're getting 50-something% ownership coming into Sale. You're getting 10% coming into Baltimore. So it's not one of those where like both sides are going low owned, but I think it is still one of those spots where like medians do not tell the story here. If Chris Sale is back to being actual Chris Sale, he is like the best play ever at 7,800 and the Orioles suck. If he is just this version of Chris Sale where he still has good strikeout stuff, but also from start to start might just, leave a bunch of stuff in the middle of the plate, every other start, the Orioles are going to look a lot better than median projections tell you. So I still think that's just a really interesting spot in general. I was actually kind of glad that it wasn't on the main slate because it's so difficult to approach.
Yeah. Chris Sale did put up 11 strikeouts against the Twins, 29 fantasy points. So, at least showed that he might still have the stuff. Kind of hard to say. All right. Do we have, I think that is going to do it. I don't think we have anything else we need to cover here. Sven Gunnarsson says, Belt is super streaky. If he starts hitting, ride the train. Isn't he? I thought he was like typically had better stats early in the season. Maybe I'm thinking of someone else.
Yeah, I don't know when he typically hits well, but yeah, he is somebody that I'm really interested in to see how things go. I think paying attention to his strikeout percentage is probably going to be a big indicator of like if he's just washed or if he has some sort of like mechanical flaw that gets fixed. If you see a stretch where like you don't want to like chase results, we talked about this the other day because you don't know when hot streaks start, stop, whatever.
Right.
But you can pay attention to something like, I said before, Brandon Belt struck out 46% of his at-bats this year. That's not something Brandon Belt typically does. So if you start to see like a rolling average where, his strikeout percentage is suddenly like 18% and he's hitting the ball hard, there's a good chance that it's just like, all right, Brandon Belt fixed whatever was wrong with him. If you just continue to see him striking out a ton and he hits a home run here or there, like he probably still is having some issues.
Okay. All right. So yeah, pay attention, I guess. Any final thoughts, Adam?
No. Yeah. So I'll have my MLB article, my NBA article, both coming out in the next hour or two. Bet Pro video as well. Tweeted out some bets that I made this morning, along with a link to Odd Shopper. Check my Twitter account if you want to tail those or find your own. And then I'll be back for the deeper dive at 5.
Is your Bet Pro videos, is it focused on one sport in particular when you do those? Like you do a bet, like an NBA Bet Pro or an MLB?
Primarily NBA, but then I do flip over to the MLB side. And then also, like recently, we've been having 3 and 4 game NBA slates. There's a chance that I end up having to include some more MLB just because eventually we're going to start running out of profitable.
I think we're getting there. Yeah. Right. Cool. Yeah. So check out Adam's stuff. I will be back in half an hour to do a SoRare NBA show with Greg, so come back in half an hour for that. I'll also be recording an NBA, SoRare NBA VOD as well, and then I'll be on Live Before Lock. So Adam will be on deeper dive tonight. I'll be back on Live Before Lock for NBA along with Greg. So yeah, make sure you stick around the channel. And again, if you have not yet liked this video, please do like the video, subscribe to the channel if you haven't already, hit the notification button so you can get alerts when our shows go live. Really appreciate your support. Good luck today. I'll catch you in half an hour if you join me for that show. Later, guys.